I think that newspaper, print experience, press service experience is rather fundamental to doing a good broadcast job. Although, of course, there are the exceptions which perhaps prove my rule or else completely disprove it, such as Ed Murrow, who never had print experience and did pretty well in broadcasting. But I'm afraid that there are a lot of young people coming along today, going into broadcasting, going through communication schools, whose real intent is to be stars. If television hadn't come along to be glamorous, they'd have gone to drama school and come to Hollywood. Instead, they've gone into television news. I kind of suspect at school they take trench coat 1 and 2 and makeup 1 and 2.
But where would you tell a young, aspiring television journalist to start?
Well, I would suggest they go into print for 3 or 4 years as a sort of an apprenticeship. But I don't mean to paint all of these people with the same dark brush. There are some very fine young people coming out of communication schools who really do have the gut instinct to be journalists, and they're good ones. But I think they'd be better ones if they had some practice writing for print. You see, the problem is in our business, everything is capsulated today. Everything in life is getting down to the shortest possible denomination. I mean, get it on, get it off, you know. And in broadcasting, that's particularly true. Well, I don't think that in news, unless you know what belongs in the 30th paragraph of a story, you really can know what ought to be in those 2 or 3 paragraphs you're going to be able to deliver in the encapsulated form for television. And I'd like to think that those young people know how to get the whole story and not just the skim the cream off the top.
Well, the world news is covered by the networks each night in, what, 26 minutes, something like that?
23 or 4 when you get rid of the commercials and the bridges and introductions and all that.
And it's you that advocates reading your newspaper to get the full story.
I think people have to, and I hope that, although I'm not sure that they all are absorbing this idea yet, but I think that schools ought to teach very early on how to read a newspaper, how to listen to radio, how to watch television, in order that people will understand that from that little bit of television, they can't get everything they need to know. They get a lot. They get more than a lot of people ever got before. Unfortunately, an awful lot of people in our country cannot, or even worse, will not read. And they are getting more news than they ever got before, of course. And all of us are getting an introduction to the people who make our news, to the places where the news is made, in a way through television you could never get in any other medium.
We're getting a lot of facts. Are we getting the truth?
In television, I'm not sure we always are. And this was true when I was there. This is nothing current. But when we compress the news so tightly and try so hard to get just a guide to your day in that 23 or 24 minutes. In that compression, it's much like, well, I hate to use the simile, but it's like compressing any gas. If you compress it too much, it's going to become more explosive all the time. And we leave out the parenthetical phrase, leave out the little explanatory line, simply to get more in all the time.
How would you have felt, Walter, if in your days in the print media, writing for UPI, if the government said that you couldn't go in on that rescue mission in Grenada?
I think that was the worst decision the government has ever made, and I hope it doesn't do that again. I hope that there's been enough furor raised about it, and that perhaps they see the error of their ways in this regard.
What advantage would it have been to all of us had you been there reporting from the shores of Grenada?
You don't mean me personally, you mean the press being there.
Yes.
Well, the advantages are clear. Our government this is a democracy of ours. These were our boys, our Marines, our Rangers. The decisions were made by our Secretary of Defense, our Secretary of State, our President. They're operating in our name, your name and mine. And if they're doing that in my name and your name, our name, I think we're entitled to know what they're doing. In fact, we're more than entitled to know. It's our responsibility to know. And let me draw a little parallel regarding that. When we went into those concentration camps and extermination camps in Germany with the Third Army at the end of the war, this terrible scene that met us, I don't think we had any appreciation how bad that was going to be. But as we went out then back into the countryside and met the German people around these camps, they all pleaded they didn't know what was going on in there. And I think in many cases they didn't know. But they were pleading they didn't know as a means of shucking the responsibility for what went on in those camps. They couldn't do that. They were responsible for what went on in those camps because they had let their government operate in their name, censoring the news they got, not knowing what their government was doing in their name. As long as that government operated in their name, they were responsible. We're responsible for what our government does in our name. We better find out what it's doing. We're entitled to know. It's part of the democratic system that we know. We, anchor people, or people in television news, are perfectly capable, we all know, of doing, say, 22 minutes of news and then taking that hat off and putting on a analysis hat and doing 2 minutes, which some people would consider commentary, perhaps. And they would not interfere with each other. That's the mark of a professional journalist, to be able to suppress bias and prejudice and do your job as a artisan would, and like a doctor would, operating on a criminal, or a doctor or a lawyer would defending a criminal. You take news you don't like, but you report it and try to do it down the middle. But I wouldn't expect the public, I wouldn't expect my own mother to be that sophisticated that she would understand that I can take my personal views and talk about them here and not let them affect what I do over here. So I didn't do it.